The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, friends. Today is the 15th. It's a Wednesday, I think. 15th of January 2020. And, you know, we've been away from some of these programs for about a month while we prepared for and executed the new group of world servers work. And BL has some of those up, and if I would give her everything we did, then she'd have all of them up. But they're on Makara, and if you did not have a chance to listen to some of these things about the new group of world servers, then they are there. I'm afraid my voice was a little bit hoarse on some of them, but I think the idea will come across. And then, of course, Tuya offered some broadcasts going on in the middle. So we had quite an ongoing presentation, I think over 30 programs, at least the way we have them organized, and we'll see once I give them all to BL whether, you know, there are that many, but there are quite a few. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know how it works out, but in the Arcane School, there were a lot of people associated with the Arcane School up at the Life Bridge Retreat Center, and maybe they'll have some of their programs on Lucis, perhaps. And there were other groups. Of course, the 2025 initiative worked very hard, and I think they have a place where their programs are stored. So you have plenty to listen to and to view. And to those of you who are members of the Moria Federation, obviously your work continues, but it is supplemented by these additional broadcasts. Remember this kind of quaint idea from 70 years ago, that from DK, it seems quaint now, that the teaching will go forth over the radio. Well, that's what they had at the time. And look what we have now. This is our radio, all of the audio and the still shots of video and the animated shots, and it's only going to increase, and the chance to interact with each other. So things are advancing. And during these next 5 years, I would say you're in a position to get a more thorough type of esoteric education than you may have had in the past. And you're also in a position to serve with greater esoteric effectiveness, and it does turn out to be necessary. You know, for my part, one of the things I'm trying to do is, and Tuya and I are both working on this in different ways, is bring forward the Tibetan's books in video form, and nothing fancy, you know, just the words themselves, and offer some light on what the Tibetan says. You know, that's really the reason for having study groups. People get together and they ponder a sentence or a paragraph, and more light comes. I'm trying to do that. And let's see if I succeed, or to what extent I succeed. There's already quite a bit out there in terms of commentary, either in exacting written form or maybe a looser video form. I have my eyes set on this wonderful little book called Letters on Occult Meditation, which, if anybody thinks it's easy, think again. It just has some of the great fundamentals of occultism in it. And I'd like, it's not a long book, 300 and something pages. I would like to offer thoughts regarding Letters on Occult Meditation so that it can become part of our foundation during these last 5 years or so of the Forerunner. So we do have our work cut out before us, and all who are serious disciples, it's almost like a play on words, because after a certain point of passing the temptations in the desert, you really do become a Syrian disciple. You know, you start your discipleship in a way at that time, and right at the 3rd degree. So leading up to a kind of a preliminary initiation at the 5th degree. All that's way ahead of us, but we're on our way. And the opportunity for all of us is there now. And it's my hope that I can get my colleagues to give me a hand with getting a lot of these programs up on the YouTube too, so people who are not within our normal circle hear about them and find out more about the wonderful works of Master DK. Okay, with those kinds of things in mind, I want to, excuse me, work at a slight review and finishing off a few things. And then once we have passed through the material on triangles, the science of triangles and so forth, that's found in esoteric astrology, other things are prepared to discuss with you. And of course, I think, you know, Starling David Hunter, he's the person who has done the most work on the triangles over the years, and he has some documents that we can use. And we'll, what I would also like to do is check with you on your interpretation of the foundational triangle in your horoscope. Your rising sign for the soul, your sun sign for your personality, and your moon sign for the forces which are rotary and which hold you back. I'd like to see what your interpretation is in those as regards that particular triangle. The other triangles in your chart, they do involve sometimes the monad, and I don't think that we profit too much in a general group going over that. But as Stephen Pugh calls it, the triple sun is involved, in which case we have the sun sign, the rising sign, and the point opposite the sun sign. It's a higher triangle. I've also thought of another type of triangle, which is possible, the sun, the ascendant, and the descendant, in which case you would have your personality indicated, the sun sign. You would have the energy which leads you to greater soul expression, and that would be your rising sign. And then, quite possibly, at the 7th house, you might find indications of the spiritual triad. I still have to work some of that out, but there's a lot more esotericism going on at the 7th house cusp than we would imagine when we just think of partners and all of that. The whole dweller on the threshold issues are emerging right there at the 7th house cusp. And so in a way, the soul at the rising sign is confronting the dweller at the seventh house cusp. And then as well, the personality is sort of involved in the mix. So obviously we want to continue to improve our mastery of our instrument, and at the same time serve with everything we have in a group form according to the law of group progress, or as it's called, the Capricorn law of elevation. It's the fifth law of the soul. Now, we have here just a little bit of a review, and these are the sort of the crisis constellations, 7 constellations which bring a man from the stage of individualization to the path of discipleship, and of course the triangles within them. Now, the sign in this case of individualization is Cancer. And I've begun to think, that sometimes as many as 3 constellations are involved in any stage, and as many as 3 planets, but there's always going to be a major one, and it's a little more intricate. You see what he said here, page 475. We have here's the figure, okay, and the repetitions are Capricorn and Virgo are repeated, okay? Those 3 triangles. We have here only 7 influences for the effects of the conditioning forces of the 2 triangles, predominantly active in the first 2 cycles, are fused and blended in the 3rd. And in the 3rd, we do have both Capricorn and Virgo again, which are appearing in the previous 2 triangles. These blended influences, with the aid of the remaining 5 constellations, Sagittarius, Libra, Taurus, Pisces, Aquarius, enable the disciple to escape out of the human kingdom into the kingdom of souls. Okay, so probably there's something right up here that is of importance. We talked about it before. There's the whole evolutionary cycle, bringing all the way from individualization to liberation. And I suppose in one way, this could be it, the Cancer to Capricorn. That's one way. And even you can look at Capricorn and Leo that way as well. There is also, number 2, the cycle of aspiration. Now, I'd say some of us are in that and making the transition out of it, according to the triangle involved. The cycle of aspiration from the stage of intelligent, integrated man to that of the accepted disciple. Okay? Well, look, first of all, you are the accepting disciple. Then you are the pledged disciple. This business about taking the pledge is very important, and we've been emphasizing that in the Esoteric United Nations work, which we are beginning to undertake to get a more global view of how to bring forth the soul of nations and the soul of humanity, the pledge. And following the pledge, you can become the accepted disciple. So from accepting, okay, now get this into your mind, it's easy to remember. From the accepting disciple, where you give credence to what has been taught to you, and you believe it's true, and you work upon it as if it were an hypothesis, to the pledge, where you really make a promise based upon those first principles. And then when you hold to your promise, hold to your pledge, hold to your oath as one does in that first ray body, masonry, then the possibility of becoming an accepted disciple enters. And once you are an accepted disciple, the road to real initiation, not just preliminary initiations of the threshold, that road is open to you. So from accepting to pledged to accepted to initiate. And sometimes DK talks as well about the pledged initiate. A pledge is something you never give up and never forget. And it's the same thing with an oath that you take at every incarnation. Every initiation. It shows that we are serious. I remember, Masonry is a reflection of this inner process, and it had happened some time ago, and we reached a point in the ceremony where the candidate refused to take the oath. Okay, then everything had to be scrapped, and the ceremony could not go on. And if you read carefully in Initiation Human and Solar, you will see how important is this oath. And I would say an oath is a pledge of a more serious kind. So from the evolutionary cycle to liberation, the cycle of aspiration, which takes us up to being an accepted disciple, and from this stage of intellectual expression to that of probationer. And the probationer sometimes can be considered before the real stage of discipleship and before the first initiation, but from another, until we are an accepted disciple, we are still a probationer. And then the cycle of initiation from the preparatory stage of accepted disciple to that of the master and still higher grades. These 7 crises are each reenacted during the process of, and note the word, self-initiation. Self-initiation. There's not someone running after you with a wand hoping to, apply it to you. The initiate is an initiate before he is initiated. So we know the rules and we introduce ourselves to the process of initiation, which is confirmed at the initiation ceremony. So these 7 crises are each reenacted during the process of self-initiation into the world of meaning and reality. Meaning, it's the world of the soul. Reality, it's the world of the triad. Well, really, significance is the world of the triad, and true reality is the world of the monad. They constitute the keynote or the motif of each of the 7 initiations. I mean, those about which we can think with any degree of clarity. Each of these 7 initiations permits entry into the state of divine consciousness on each of the 7 planes of divine expression, divine experience and expression. And, you know, look, things are not terribly spiritual until we reach the higher mental plane. Here's another way of looking at it. Things become spiritual on the higher mental plane, leading to the atmic plane. Things become divine on the monadic plane and logoic plane. And although everything is divine, excuse me, from another perspective, the 2 areas of real divine consciousness are the monadic and the logoic planes. So the influence of these 7 constellations is symbolized by 3 triangles and a final synthesis or focal point. Esoterically, these triangles are usually depicted as superimposed. We can only imagine, but for the sake of clarity, we're going to separate them. And you know, this is a bit of a complex area of the book, and it does warrant repetition. So from individualization to liberation, I guess that's number 1. And let's just say we have the Cancer Capricorn cycle. And one way of looking at it is that we emerge from the state of animal man, and our first incarnation as a human family is taken in the sign Cancer, even though the first individual incarnation is taken in the sign Pisces. So that's interesting, and something he tells us. Aries helps us reverse the wheel and no longer follow the inclinations of the elemental life, which describes our personality. And Capricorn, okay, from one perspective, Capricorn rules all 5 initiations, and it rules entry into the light supernal and the conquering of death, and from a certain point of view, mastership. Now, Leo can also indicate mastership. So where are you in this big program? You know, we're all pretty much at the same place here, and we're a long way from having emerged from the animal kingdom in Cancer. We have, if you're sticking with DK and theosophy and the study of these things, we have reversed the wheel, and are at least the first reversal, and we are tending towards the light. And we have, many of us, I think, taken the first initiation and are in the process of taking 5 initiations, each one of which is ruled by Capricorn in a generic manner and by other signs in other ways. Now, one of the things you'll want to do, excuse me, I'm quite sorry here. I don't really have any water here, and I just sort of began without it, so maybe we just have to struggle through these extra sounds, and I apologize for it. There are different signs connected with each one of these initiations. The first initiation, Leo, Capricorn, Gemini, Virgo, all of those very strong at the first initiation. Second initiation, Taurus for the light, Scorpio for the struggle, Libra for the balance. Third initiation, always Capricorn. And maybe Leo for the radiation of the transfiguring light, and Aries for entrance into a higher order of being. You can look at a number of constellations, and they will describe how maybe you, being a disciple and having certain constellations prominent, can move particularly towards the initiation which is ahead of you. Because every true disciple is being prepared for initiation. And then, of course, you look at the sacrifices of Pisces for the 4th degree, and you look at the way Scorpio deals death to the causal body, 4th degree, and you look at a particular quality of the Christ-like heart center, Gemini, 4th degree. In my video book, which you are welcome to pick up on Makara, I think I call it the Egoic Lotus video book, I go into all of this in considerable detail, petal after petal, initiation after initiation. And then we rise into mastership. And in mastership, we will meet the 5th sign, Leo. We will meet Aquarius. We will, for very hardy, sacrificial, saving souls, we'll meet Pisces. And of course, since Capricorn is ruling all 5 of the first initiations, we will meet Capricorn as well. And I probably can find a way in which each sign of the zodiac can be useful to advance you towards your initiatory objective, regardless of which are the more popular signs. In other words, you don't necessarily have to be a Capricorn to take the 3rd degree. The influence of Aquarius, the influence of Aries, the influence of Leo, the illumination and so forth, all can be very prominent and helpful in taking the 3rd degree, not just Capricorn, and thus it is for all of the levels. Okay. Now, so that's one way to interpret the very beginning to the end, from Cancer emerging out of that diffused, inchoate consciousness into a Leonian point. That's another sign for individualization, learning which way to go eventually, and finally climbing out of the 4th kingdom of nature into the 5th kingdom of nature. That's what we all really are trying to do. Okay, then comes the cycle of aspiration from the stage of intelligent, integrated man to that of accepted disciple. Now look, not everybody who has a good thinking power is a disciple or an accepted disciple. There has to be something going on in the heart center for that really to happen. And many very intelligent people are just not there. They're in the 3rd race stage, so to speak, and they are going from intelligence into discipleship. And from the experience of intellectual expression, I mean, just, turn on your television, look at all the politics. That's where a lot of these people are, intellectual expression, leadership expression, so forth, but not the number of real disciples that you meet in the political arena and maybe even in the church arena are not as many as we might think. There are more people driven by ambition, which is another Capricorn kind of quality, but ambition is not discipleship. Now let's get that straight. Ambition is not discipleship. It may tell us in The Light of the Soul, that rather militant book, as DK says, written by the Master Hilarion, work as one who is ambitious, but be not ambitious. And it's just, ambitious people are those who have a small view of what the self really is. Think about that for a minute. We have a lot of that going on in politics, and the eyes are on the personal self. It's not the same as seeing as the soul sees, or seeing from even elevations beyond that of what we normally call the soul and the causal body. So ambition may be necessary at a certain stage in your climb towards intellectuality, and then even towards the possibility of sacrifice, but it is not the way to proceed into the higher levels of realization. So this is going here from intelligent, integrated man, intellectual expression, and what have we got? Let's see, what do we have? We have that intelligence sign, Gemini. We have where you know everything about everything, and you're able to make all those relations between the objects of perception so that there is perceived a cause and effect, intelligent relationship there. And then we climb into the area of increasing mercurial light upon the astral body, even upon the mind, as Scorpio is not just a dark sign, it's a sign of real illumination in the fivefold what can I call it? The fivefold sequence of stages: concentration, meditation, contemplation, illumination, Scorpio, inspiration, Sagittarius, initiation, Capricorn. So it's it's concentration, Leo, meditation, Virgo, contemplation, Libra. You could memorize this too. Illumination, Scorpio. There's 6 of them actually. Inspiration, Sagittarius. Initiation, Capricorn. So more light is being thrown on your condition, and usually accepted discipleship is coming somewhere as you're approaching the second initiation. A lot of DK's groups were in that particular stage, maybe in the present life or the next one or the next one. They would be taking the second initiation. I remember a man who was DK's disciple. I think his name was LUT. From one respect, it means to battle. He was a Taurus, and he had also Libra and Leo, and he had some definite obstacles. But he had sacrificed his life for Master DK in a previous incarnation. And he was, as DK said, the masters are not ungrateful. So he's a Taurus now, and he said, in your next incarnation, you can go through the tremendous tests which basically prepare you for the second initiation, which would mean he would have a Scorpio life. So for some, few, the second initiation probability was occurring in the instructions they were receiving and in the present incarnation. For others, the next incarnation would be it, and for still others, a few incarnations ahead. But given that the period of time between the first initiation and the second, both of them initiations of the threshold, given that that can be a long time, these people were well along in the process. And, you know, all of us, it's difficult. We tend to count time as the personality counts it. And we tend to say, time is short, you know, and if we would see things from the age-old patience of the soul, millions and millions of years as the observer and the sponsor of personality possibilities, then we would have a different sense of time altogether. So I think you can see here that accepted discipleship is largely occurring as we're approaching the second initiation, or somewhere in the middle there, between the first and second, and maybe some very few people go from the first initiation to the second rapidly, even one life or two, but it can be many lives for the average person. I think the time equation is in our hands, but it leads into that acquiescent sign, Virgo. You know, Virgo is the sign of the garden, interestingly. And it was in the Garden of Gethsemane that the Christ taught us so much about acquiescence, as he acquiesced to that stream of will energy, which could make him an initiate of the 6th degree, and basically did make him an initiate of the 6th degree, able to take the ascension that is the 6th degree. In other words, through that Virgo thing, he acquiesced to the monadic level, because how interesting. In the garden, Virgo, he acquiesces to the monadic level of Sanat Kumara, who extends to him the line of will and says, this is how it should be. And Virgo rules the monadic plane. Look at how all those things come together to show acquiescence at a very high level. Now, for us, we have to acquiesce in a different way. And we learn how to be obedient. Now, that's one of the things about Virgo, learning to be obedient, humble, not asking for your separated self. And that is necessary before one becomes truly an accepted disciple. Now, you know, when you're accepted, there's a connection between you and the master. The master originates the connection on his end, and he doesn't have to, in that way, receive reports anymore from an interior guiding disciple as he would within the stage of Chela in the light. See, you know, you meet the outer disciple in little Chelaship. Someone on the physical plane guides you. Chela in the light, someone on the higher, subtler planes guides you and makes report to the master, and then comes the stage of accepted discipleship. And It is there that the master establishes contact with you direct, and he knows what you're doing. But that requires a degree of humility. And so we can see, in a way, why Virgo is ending this triangle in which we have achieved or are achieving the stage of accepted discipleship, having come from the stage of intelligent man. Then fighting it out in Scorpio between the lower tendencies and the higher, and then in Virgo acquiescing. Okay, so I think that, you know, that makes sense. Now let's take a look at the last one here. The cycle of initiation. See, in other words, number one includes everything from the beginning to the end. Number two, from the intelligent man to the accepted disciple, having gone through accepting, pledging, and being accepted. Okay, now DK does do a lot to emphasize the importance of first being an accepting disciple. So many people, they may expect big results, but they're not really accepting as true and at least as hypothetically experimental the principles of the ageless wisdom. You have to do that, and then you have to go out on a limb, and you have to make a pledge. And the people who are really making the pledge are making an oath, and they're basically saying, no matter what, I will do this. Now that takes some real, that's going to take some discipline, obviously. And you probably have experience with it, going through those kinds of things where no matter what, you do it. I remember I had one incident in my life where I knew what was right and I knew what I wanted to do. They were different. And I literally had to hold my body in place to keep it from following the trajectory of the desire rather than what I knew was right. It was a battle. I won that one. I've lost others, We've been told we are battle-scarred warriors, and we've trodden up to a certain point the thorny path of occultism, and we find there have been some wounds in the soles of our feet. So, it's not easy. And if I say that, then somebody with a lot more experience than I have is going to say the same thing, and it's going to mean something even more severe. But the old story about the young Chela whose master held his head underwater for quite a long time, I've told you that one. And then when he pulled him up for air, the master said, "What were you thinking? What was your thought? What was your desire? What was going on with you when you were underwater?" And the would-be Chela, who had just said, "Master, please take me as one of your disciples, Chelas. I'm ready. I want to be your student." So the half-drowned Chela said, "I could only think of one thing, air, Master. I had to have air." And, it always impresses me so much what the master says. He says, "Okay, when you want the wisdom as much as you wanted the air underwater. Come back and see me. It's a powerful lesson, you know. So the desire for these states that are only reached through sacrifice has to be very intense for there to be real progress. And I would just say, we've got 5 years now to be as intense about it as you've ever been in your whole life. Because with the ecological crisis, the global warming, the economic lack of sharing, the seeking for military dominance and general hegemony, and a bunch of bad things are being released as the whispers of the Black Lodge find their target. So, you know, this next 5 years is really intense, and whatever you can pull out of yourself to help the plan become real, that will be required. Now, the third stage here, from accepted discipleship to master and still higher grades. The 7 crises, we remember them, and we'll look at the signs involved there. Their self-initiation, okay? And they are the keynote or motif. Every crisis is related to one of the 7 initiations. You know, there were only maybe a very few of DK students who had taken the 3rd initiation. And among them, we just would have to say Alice Bailey at a certain point and Roberto Assagioli. I think those are the only ones we can really be sure of. Mostly because of what Alice Bailey did, and then additionally because of what Roberto Assagioli was told about being the initiate disciple. So very few, and the rest had taken the 1st degree, and be it in the present life or lives ahead, the 2nd loomed ahead of them. A few had the 3rd looming ahead, but they were not in a position yet to take it. So what's our figure here? Born from accepted disciple all the way to master and beyond. Now, what does that mean? Well, Capricorn is going to take us through 5 initiations, and an accepted disciple usually begins at initiation before initiation 2. Then we reach eventually this stage of acquiescence under Virgo. It's not the early Virgo. It's something much more related to purification, to the monad, to the heart center, because more second ray is coming through Virgo right now than any other constellation. And then Leo. Now Leo is going to be mastership. Can Leo be beyond mastership? Yes, and so what you can do is look at these two, this triangle, and say, okay, accepted discipleship, or 3rd degree, 4th degree, 5th degree, Virgo 4th degree, Leo 5th degree, or then you can go to Capricorn 5th degree, Virgo 6th degree, because it's the plane of the monad, and Leo 7th degree. Why? Because all I have to do is find it, right? Try to find it for you. Cause. Here it is. The divine flame. The divine flames and the sea of fire are ruled by Leo. And that's where the 7th degree is really taken. Now look, if Christ hasn't completed the 7th degree, and neither has the Buddha, we're kind of talking out of our hat to say it's this and it's that, you know, would be a higher type of Chohan. And then the Christ and the Buddha will go on to the 8th degree. And all the rays of attribute will be involved, and then on to the 9th degree where the rays of aspect will be involved. But, you know, we know just nothing there. If we even knew about the 3rd degree, more of DK students would be in an illumined position. But right now we're mostly fighting between the pairs of opposites, the soul and the personality. And if you've completed your battle between the soul and personality, really completed it, and I mean really completed it, then you're a 3rd degree initiate and you will know what you are. Master Jesus was that when he was Joshua, the high priest. And Master Moria was that. I don't know when. Was he Charlemagne? I don't know. But sometimes a hint seems to be given. And maybe when Master Rákóczi or the Count, you know, was Roger Bacon, maybe he was the 3rd degree. Because there's Francis Bacon, not Roger Bacon, he seemed to take the 4th degree. Those are high stages, very, very low in the great scheme of things, of course. But for people like ourselves who are struggling to live according to the higher of the pairs of opposites, a triangle, you know, personality, soul, disciple. Disciple in the middle. It's an important triangle. And in that triangle, the disciple must acquiesce and identify as the soul, focus within the soul, and leave the domination of the personality behind. As a matter of fact, I've sometimes pulled this reference out, and I'm going to see if I can do it again. I always forget the page. It's late in the book. It's in the raised initiations. And you'll see how important it is. Okay. And here it is, page 7. No wonder I always miss it. Page 686. So let me get these, all these initiations somehow underlined or highlighted. And you'll see it, and you'll understand. Initiation 3, transfiguration, and look what happens. Freedom from the ancient authority of the threefold personality, marking a climaxing moment in the history of all initiates. And I would say that the kind of probationary initiates that are working with Master DK now, so many of them have that second degree to accomplish, and also the third. Number two, baptism freedom from the control of the emotional nature and the selfish sensitivity of the lower self. A lot of people still have this, and a few among his group were striving toward initiation 3. And I think the words are so beautifully chosen: freedom from the ancient authority of the threefold personality. So then I think we understand how you can begin as an accepted disciple in Capricorn. You can go to the 4th degree in Virgo, where your acquiescing heart is involved, and you surrender, renounce, and all that, which Virgo is good at doing, and go on to mastership in Leo. Or take this a little higher, and let's start from the 3rd degree, or even the 5th degree in Capricorn, move into the monad in Virgo, and move into the sea of fire as a 7th degree Chohan in Leo. So I hope that as a result of this little teaching, that you've absorbed the way those 3 triangles can be used. He says we have here 3 triangles, but at the same time, only 7 influences. For the effects of the conditioning forces of 2 triangles predominantly active in the first 2 cycles, are fused and blended in the 3rd. Now there's 5 constellations remaining, and those 5 are specifically for escaping into the 5th kingdom. And let's see if he has that here. No, that's a different one. Okay, so we've had the 7 constellations of crisis, and then we have 8 constellations, which include 3 out of the earlier 7, which bring the man to the stage of the perfected soul. And somewhere over here, I think I have it. Let's see if I can get this. Perfected. Sorry. Perfected soul. Yeah. 8 constellations, which include 3 out of the 7. Now you should know those crises constellations. You should just know them off the, sort of the top of your head here. And they are Cancer, Aries, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Gemini, and Leo. And Capricorn is 3rd degree in this case, Gemini 4th degree, Leo 5th degree, Virgo involved with purification, 2nd degree, 1st degree, Aries with reversing the wheel, and somehow Cancer involved in all of the earlier elemental stages. It's been a while since we've been doing this. Okay. The perfected soul. So the 8 will be Taurus, Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius, Pisces, Leo, Virgo, and maybe Capricorn. Okay, I don't want to get too much into that, and maybe this is a good stopping place. But we really need, in a way, they're the 7 crises, there they are. And there's the order: Leo, Virgo, or rather Cancer, Aries, Capricorn, Gemini, Scorpio, Virgo, and Leo. And then we're going to add some other constellations to take us to the end of the whole process. And then I interpolated this. This is all a review about the different types of forces and fires that come from the different rays, and they're very important. And we see how different rays are involved at the 7 initiations. Ray 1 at initiation 7, Ray 2 at initiation 6, Ray 3 at initiation 5, and so forth. More than one ray are involved, but the triangle for truly post-human development is Ray 3, 4, 5. And from another perspective, it is Ray 1 for initiation 5, Ray 3 for initiation 6, and Ray 2 for initiation 7. So you just have to know the way the different constellations combine to make these great openings of consciousness possible. All right. I know if I get too much into it, it'll all get kind of tangled up. There are ways of looking at the different constellations in relation to each chakra, to each plane, to each of the 7 initiations, and we could set up parallel lines to show how that would work. When I'm looking at this thing here right now, I see Cancer with its ruler, the moon, could easily be looked at as the etheric physical plane. Scorpio with its ruler, Mars, easily the 2nd initiation, where you're really fighting it out for your values and your desires. Capricorn, the whole mental plane, the 3rd initiation. Gemini, you're on the cross. It rules the 4th, and Leo, the 5th initiation. Virgo rules the monadic plane, the 6th initiation for the Chohans, and then Aries, the 7th. So, you know, when you're talking about the 7th initiation, look who's involved. Not only Leo for the Sea of Fire, but Aries for the whole number 7, where you are starting, you're resurrected, you know, if I can put it that way. And Aries is the sign of resurrection and the possibility of being resurrected has to do with the Aries energy. And there are other ways of looking at this as well, according to the 2nd ray, where you get love and wisdom coming from the sun. But I don't want to get, too complicated about this, because unless you're deeply into astrology, you're liable to throw up your hands and say, my God, it's too complex. But I will just say that the different constellations arranged differently in triangles, in septenates, all that, tell us a lot about what chakra we're dealing with, what initiation we are dealing with, and what plane we're dealing with. And these kinds of things should be well enough known in your mind so you can make arrangements and rearrangements. I was just thinking about a triangle. If I say to you, Aries, Leo, Capricorn, what will you tell me? you'll tell me something about the first ray, that these three bring in the first ray. Well, which is more important, Aries, Leo, or Capricorn? It just depends on what stage we are in this, what's called triangles in rotation. I can look at Aries as most important, carrying the first aspect in purity. Leo as secondary, carrying the second aspect of the first. And Capricorn as tertiary, carrying the third aspect of the first. But maybe, and Aries rules the highest initiation, but maybe I just want to rotate that triangle a little bit. And I will have the beginning in Aries, followed by Capricorn, followed by Leo. Leo will rule the sea of fire and some kind of connection with the divine flames. Aries will be the beginning, the will to create. And along the way, Capricorn will give us the will that conquers death. All I want to say is, all of these triangles are triangles in rotation. They can be rotated, and every one of the zodiacal signs can mean something different depending on what position it holds within the triangle. Can Capricorn be the top? It can. And can Leo be the beginning? It can be. Aries secondary, Capricorn, or Aries can begin it all and say, I aspire to the soul. Leo can say, I am the soul. Capricorn can say, I am the spirit and the will that conquers death. So be flexible in your mind and don't just lock on to a particular part of a triangle and say, it's always this, because it isn't. And this would be called the law of mutation. And DK says it's quite complex, and he doesn't get into it too much. It's got a lot to do with Gemini, but things keep changing position. And as they change position, they change significance, they change power, they change function. So you have to have a flexible Geminian mind to see where in this law of mutation things are now. And of course, let's be an arhat or a master to really be able to do that, and let's know the cycles, and let's have all knowledge on the third level of the atomic plane, and then we'll be able to see these things. But look, we've got to get started. And we can't say, oh, that's too complex for me. It might be right now, but the way to handle complexity and the way to handle utter simplicity is just to begin handling them. That's it. And before long, may not be in this life, whatever, facility will be gained. Look at this sentence. It's really good. It's about Aries ruling the seventh initiation. It involves the entire head center. This is what DK says. Aries begins the process and is the, quote, initiator of the process which leads to progress. And note that. Is really bringing in the new age in a certain way. The initiator of the process which leads to progress. And at the end of the age, as it is now at the final or seventh initiation, and we don't know what age yet, okay? The initiator of the mysteries will work under instructions and with energies which emanate from the Lord of the constellation Aries. Now, right now, that initiator, Sanat, is very Saturnian, Capricornian, the ancient of days, working under instruction from the energy of Capricorn. But let's not forget that Sanat is also the youth of endless summers and is also the very beginning of things and the fresh new impulse. And the day will come when that one initiator and a couple of initiators beyond him, including the full planetary logos, will work with the energies of Aries in the higher initiations and under instruction. Now, this is about where we got to last time, and I admit that the material can be considered a bit complex unless you have a really good handle on what the different constellations of the zodiac can do in relation to the chakras, to the initiations, and to the planes. And DK even has a couple of more things here. The planes, the 7 states of resultant consciousness, the 7 crises leading to the expansion of consciousness, the 7 initiations climaxing these expansions, and the 7 centers wherein these expansions are realized, okay? So every sign of the zodiac has a kind of a connection with these 5 different areas: planes, consciousness, crises, initiations, and chakras or centers. And I guess, my hope here is to discuss the constellations, and of course, one can do this with the planets too, in such a way that you can combine them to see what their potentials are in triangles. If I gave you, I've done it before, if I gave you a triangle that looked like Cancer, Leo, Aquarius, what would it suggest to you? But I can suggest to you, without going through a big deal right now, that it would suggest diffuse, inchoate consciousness of the mass, Cancer, individual consciousness, distinctively your own, Leo, group consciousness, Aquarius. I could, out of the number of possible triangles in the zodiacal circle, I could choose many. And you would know well enough the potentials, high and low, of each constellation so that you could come up with a meaning. You know, I could, not the only meaning, or would I be suggesting it's the only meaning? Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Initiation, Capricorn. Universalization, Aquarius. You know, distribution of what you saw when you were initiated. Identification, Pisces. That's one way of looking at it. So you have to develop the flexibility and the power of combination to see what a triangle can mean, what's high and low in the triangle at the time, at any one time, under the law of mutation. And then you can propose different possibilities. Now, right at home, if I was to say in my own horoscope that I have Cancer rising, Sun in Aries, and the Moon in Aquarius, that should mean something to me in terms of my spiritual progress, and the level is already set if I'm a true spiritual student. In other words, Cancer's on top. The Sun in Aries is secondary, and the Moon in Aquarius is tertiary. But if I were so fortunate as to be able to go beyond that, then I would work with the triple Sun. And I would say Aries the lowest, Cancer the middle, and Libra the highest monadic indicator. What would that mean? Provided I can actually somehow catch a ray of the monad. And so it goes. But we have to have enough sharpness of definition to be able to make these combinations and see their potentials. Now I realize, friends, I've talked for a long time. Well, we've been gone a long time, you know. It's been a month since we've been able to do much. And the next time, I intend to finish this. Well, at least get to the place where conclusions, because conclusions is a very short thing. Well, maybe not as so short as I thought. So there might be one or two more things. Yeah, conclusions is a little longer. When the Tibetan says, look here, I could fill many volumes with the indications of the various triangles as they are discovered to be related in time and space. Goodness me, he knows a lot. And he's sharing a little bit of it with us if we could only do it. No, these conclusions will last longer, but at least we'll get to that place where things are concluded, and we'll be able to take it up to page 503. All I have to do is find 503 somewhere here. And, you know, a lot of the writing in red here is my own writing and so forth. And maybe, I hope I haven't gone too far. Let's see. 503. Nope. That's it. And that's the end. So it'll still be some work that we have to do. Now I'm going to go back, and I think I don't know whether I called this number 62 or 63. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. But,
this is webinar number 62.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So let's just see here. We'll call this the end of webinar number 62 and page 476. And we'll begin with webinar 63 next time, and also at that page. So what can you do? Meanwhile, maybe do a little review of these pages and try, when you look at a constellation of the zodiac, to realize the highest influences that it can bring for humanity. We can't go way, way beyond that. And some of the average influences it brings, and even some of the low influences it brings. Now, what we're interested in is the transitional influences that take us from being a sincere disciple into being an accepted disciple, and even a preliminary initiate, an initiate of the third degree one day. So the second degree, the third degree, they lie before us. I wouldn't waste a lot of time imagining that you're going to be taking the fourth degree. It's mostly fancy in people's understanding, and mostly untrue, although really the whole question of initiation lies between you and your master, and other disciples don't really get into the act unless they are assigned by the master to do so, as in the case of Chela in the light. So now, if I just can make this a little bigger so I know where I'm going next time, and there being some degree of hope. Okay, this will be it. Next time, Michael, if you're here with us, this is where we'll come into it, and I hope that the idea of these qualities is becoming more real to each of us. Sometimes when we look at a constellation of the zodiac, we just think in average terms, as if we're reading some kind of thing we pick up in a pharmacy or a grocery store. But this is esoteric astrology, and it's meant to show us how we can use the science of triangles to enter into higher states of perception. Soul perception, triadal perception, which is real soul perception, and finally monadic perception, as the Chohans have, and eventually, however many thousands of years it may take, the kind of perception that Christ has within the sea of fire, as he, in Shambhala, sits at the right hand of the Father. Okay, so I apologize for the long presentation here, but maybe in reviewing it, something of value will emerge. And what I'll do is simply ask if there are statements or questions about what we've covered, or about what our subject seems to touch upon. In other words, maybe it's not exactly in the pages, but it stimulated an idea for you, and the idea needs following up. Remember a lot of work that I'm attempting to do with you and myself is to cultivate the abstract mind, which will be the subject of our efforts for 2,000 years during the 6th subrace of the 5th root race. So if you sometimes say, hey, this is all pretty abstract, that's the purpose anyway. And once we learn how to make a seamless mind, where we don't have to shift gears every time we change from concrete to center of mind to higher mind to abstract mind to transcendental mind to nirvanic mind, whatever. You know, if you've learned how to drive with a gear shift, you know there were some bad moments when you didn't handle the clutch correctly and you got a grinding of the gears. We want to go beyond that. Go beyond that. So we have a seamless relationship in mind from the highest to the lowest. Okay, your thoughts, and my apologies for probably the lengthiest presentation that I've given in a long time. But remember, we haven't been together for a while because of the festival week of the new group of World Service. So, thoughts and questions, anything that may occur to you that may be of value to you at this point. And some of you are still here. Boy, you're the tough ones, okay? You managed to stay. Remember, check out your sun, moon, and rising sign. And that's what you're going to work with at first. Put your rising sign on top, your sun sign in the middle, and the moon sign on the bottom. And maybe you'll have a life direction. Like if I was a person with Aquarius rising, that it would be the top. If my sun was in Taurus, that would be the middle. And if my moon were in Pisces, that'd be the bottom. And I'd try to move from the bottom to the top. We're going to get into that and some of the things it could mean for you, okay? It means something different for everybody. Is there anything, friends, that you would like to ask or say?
Martha has a question saying, this study should affect our process of meditation, it would seem.
Okay. Well, yes, certainly what you're going to concentrate upon and where you put yourself in terms of your next meditative efforts. You know, like Martha, I'm thinking about that book by Ernest Wood. You go into Theosophy and there it is, concentration. There's a lot of people that need to learn how to concentrate. Simple as that. Bring the point to the center and don't deviate. There are then some people who, having learned how to concentrate, can learn how to meditate. Okay. They can begin to analyze the seed thoughts that they may have and to draw into relation to those seed thoughts other worthy thoughts. But okay, that's not as far as it goes. There are other people who can learn this amazing art of contemplation, which, when you consider it in some ways, takes you all the way to the highest levels of samadhi and takes you beyond saying, this, I'm here and this is there. I am this and this is that, or that is that. I am this and that is that. In other words, in meditation, there may be still a separation between you, the meditator, and what you're meditating upon. But maybe some people will be skillful enough, brave enough, understanding enough to start dwelling on a object and find that the meditator and that which is meditated upon are basically the same thing. And you have the beginning of the merging of the subject-object dualism into one. And then we can go on with the effects of the illumined mind and the inspired descent of uplifting energy, and finally, real initiation, you know, and it keeps going from Leo all the way to Pisces. So indeed, if we can understand what is it we can get out of a particular sign of the zodiac and why we're using that sign of the zodiac, and maybe it's important to us, it will affect what we're doing and how we're doing it in the whole meditative art. So basically, I'm agreeing with you.
And so Martha thanks you for your response, and Joe writes, I note that the full moon group meditations open up higher qualities of the triangles. Example, Virgo, Leo, Cancer.
Yes, and there always will be higher be good to have a drink of water here. I'm sorry, but there, you know, these are constellational lords. I remember I had a friend, still have a friend, and he said, oh, constellations, it's just how it looks to us in the sky. And then we begin to, from our angle, and then we begin to look at what DK says. The Lord of the constellation Aries, the Lord of the constellation Libra, you know, and some other ones. Lord of the constellation. These are very high beings. And so although we might look at the ordinary qualities as we receive the energy of these constellations and say, well, that's what's going on. And when you look in white magic, sometimes it seems that that's what he's saying. He is saying that, but he's also saying constellations at the personality level, constellations at the soul level, constellations at the monadic level. He's saying all of those. And so when we do our full moon kinds of things, we can go up to the monadic plane with Virgo. We can enter the sea of fire with Leo. And if we're, oh golly, how to do it? On the seventh plane of the cosmic physical plane is a concentration of a hierarchy called Cancer, veiling the Christ. And it is about ready to make transference, elevation, upliftment to the cosmic astral plane. It's ruled by Neptune. And it probably has, in relation to it, the seed of everything we call desire here on the lower planes, except it's a very, very high kind of desire. The second cosmic path, golly, you know, Michael, do you know, I'm always forgetting that name for the second cosmic path. Do you have it somewhere? I mean, you know, Earth service and then blank, and then, you know, planetary logoi, and then Sirius. And then whenever I hear it, I say, oh, of course, of course. But somewhere there is the name for the second cosmic path. Anyway, it controls desire. And interestingly enough, now get a load of this, not only does it control desire on the cosmic physical plane, a very high thing to do, but monads of the fifth ray are largely in charge of the process and go on that path. So, maybe the fastest way to, I don't know, there must be some psychological thing in me that is preventing me from really I'm always forgetting that thing. So path of Earth service. Okay. Well, it doesn't seem to. Oh, you know why? Because I have the unfinished autobiography checked, and she wasn't doing that there. So let's see. Path of Earth service. And back to typing 101. Well, anyway, we're going to run into some kind of, there it is, magnetic work. Why do I always forget that? Anyway, he says people on the fifth ray, i.e., those whose monads are on the fifth ray, oftentimes take this path. Now that's really interesting because you can't have monads on the fifth ray in the sea of fire. You can only have them on the monadic plane. So it tells you that the first of your monadic rays is really important in determining which path you will take. Magnetic work, magnetic work, magnetic work, drawing off the bad astrality of the cosmic physical plane and substituting a purer type of desire nature. Now, the study of these paths is really, it's an amazing thing. And if you are interested, I've got commentary on this. If it's not written commentary, it's a video commentary on Makara, where I go in quite detail, word for word, basically, as he's describing the 7 paths in 3 different locations. And the first location is the it's the solar. What's that second book? The Initiation, Human and Solar, at the end. Then he gives you more in a treatise on cosmic fire, and then he says, "It has been permitted to me to give you still more on the 7 or 9 paths now. 2 more paths were allowed in." And he does that in the Rays and the Initiations, his last book. It's a fantastic study, but you've got to be prepared for it. I don't think the wisdom is to kind of make that your first object of attention, maybe to inspire you. Oh yeah, there are these paths through the constellations, but make sure you build adequately from below. So really now there are 9 paths, and he didn't give the names of the 2 new ones, but on page 412 of Rays and Initiations, you will find them. Okay, I hope I answered that. Michael, is there anybody else here that has not retreated in horror before the complexity of this stuff?
At the present, I am not seeing any other hands or questions raised. I did want to mention, when you were talking about combining the minds, that could be also considered another way to look at continuity of consciousness.
Yes, I believe that is correct. And when you manage, if you're given suppose you're given something like this, with a bunch of all that, all these divisions. Now, I used to study with an eminent psychologist in esotericism. He passed on at a ripe old age. And basically, instead of 3 minds unite, he would say 5 minds unite, okay? And here's how he counted it. Concrete mind, son of mind, or higher mind, son of mind, abstract mind, transcendental Buddhic mind, nirvanic mind. There's your 5. And when you can eliminate the grinding of the gears as you go from one to another, then indeed you've achieved a desirable continuity of consciousness on one level. But I would like to say, look at all these divisions here. Huge number of divisions. And taking us up on the cosmic planes about which we know, and I shouldn't even use the word know, the slightest little bit. Just a little bit. I would say that when we can eliminate all these bars, all these subplanes and subplanes, and just go from top to bottom seamlessly, that would be a very high state of continuity of consciousness. Right now, our continuity of consciousness could be measured simply by our ability to move from the 18 lower subplanes onto the higher 3. Easily, focusing within the causal body. So it means different things depending on who we are and what we're trying to achieve. For the Christ, continuity of consciousness would include the cosmic astral plane, and he'd be able to come and go as he wished. So within the realm of mind, yes, we could overcome a lot of those apparent barriers if we had continuity of mental consciousness, but let's put it beyond that and say there could be continuity of all kinds of consciousness. And we'd have to be a pretty high consciousness to achieve that kind of easy travel from the top to the bottom. And I think that a great individual like the Christ or the Buddha, I think they demonstrate that within a certain range. The Christ could talk about the most practical things, and yet we know that his consciousness was atmic monadic. That's where he was focused. And later, the beginning of logoic. So he really had a range, and he could go on the elevator of consciousness where he needed to go. So thanks for that suggestion.
And Blavatsky calls the 7 systemic planes as planes of consciousness. And yet, in another sense, another perspective, the cosmic planes are planes of consciousness.
They are too. They are too. And the only thing we don't, well, there's so much we don't know about those cosmic planes, but the question is, what is their material constituents? What are they composed? We know that the 7 planes here are composed of matter of ever simplifying degree until we reach that tiniest of all things that we call the bubble in the koilon. Okay. Now the bubble in the koilon, is it differentiable, and is there a material basis to the cosmic planes? And I think that's quite a question. But look, it's the Christ who's blazing the way, and the Buddha. And toward the end of the Aquarian age, they will stand before the planetary logos and finish the seventh initiation, at which time we're told they will go on to places and realms of activity about which we can have no idea, but I think that he means the cosmic astral plane. And under the number 8, and I think they will become initiates of the 8th degree in time. We don't know what the timing is there, but they'll be able to come and go, because they have not taken the 9th initiation, which refuses at this time any further contact with the cosmic etheric physical plane. I mean, great things lie ahead, and it's so much more interesting than the very dull and concrete presentation of what is heaven and what is hell and all. It's just childish in its presentation, childish in its meaning. You can understand people holding on to that kind of thing, but the time has now come for a more intelligent, more expansive, more spiritual, more divine point of view. You can be sure that the people who are holding on to heaven and hell and paradise and hell will fight you to maintain their concreteness. You can be sure of that. It's as old as the Inquisition. Look what happened to Giordano Bruno, who was a great, somehow instinctive cosmologist, and understood about the light from stars and the different times of that light reaching the earth, and how what we were seeing was not really what is. I mean, he had a lot. But the concretion of the limited minds who couldn't stand the idea of eternal evolution just, did away with him. And you will be fought if you try to present these points of view. I had my experience, I don't know. In the old days, I must have been some kind of old fundamentalist preacher, because I always sought those guys out. And they invited me to lunch, and I gave them a dose of Bailey. And I don't know if they've still recovered from it. But they were polite enough, although you could see that they were clinging desperately to heaven and hell as concretions. Okay. Somehow you have to present what you know in a way that is sometimes acceptable. And if it's too inappropriate, just don't present it, Well, I was a young person then, and I don't think I knew better. But I know a little better now.
Know thy audience.
That's it. He says, what does he say? The Master Moria deals with that. He says, always speak to the level of your, then he uses a fancy word, interlocutor, or your question or whatever. And you're having a conversation. Speak to the level of consciousness, or at least just a little bit ahead, so there can be a stretch. But an old psychologist friend of mine used to tell me, look, if you talk too far ahead, you'll lose them for sure. They can't go with you. But if you talk just a little bit ahead, they might be able to make the bridge. So every once in a while, I do remember that. And I think it's well for all of us to remember, but not use it as an excuse not to offer some alternative point of view, even if it disagrees with their presently held point of view. I have relatives and in-laws who are my future targets, but I haven't quite decided haven't quite decided how to go about it yet. I'll let you know when it happens. Okay, Michael, anything else here?
Looking, and I see no other hands or questions.
Okay, friends. So look, just to let you know, those who are interested in one approach to an esoteric United Nations, there can be many approaches. You know, there's no monopoly here. Tuya and I and some others, we're offering that possibility, and on one of the days forthcoming, maybe it'll be Sunday, I'm not sure, those who have not had a chance to make their pledge to kind of give 2 to 5 minutes or so of thought per day to a particular country and evoking its soul can have a chance to make that pledge with the others who are making that pledge. Remember how important is the pledge. If you look up in your Alice Bailey CD-ROM the word pledge and then look up the word oath, you'll be shocked to see how much DK expects that we are ready to make a pledge or an oath. And there's no initiation without it, and no approach to initiation without the pledge discipleship. So if you're interested, I think, Michael, you have, if I'm correct, I think you have the names of the people who were at webinar number 2, something like that. You were, BL has it, I don't know.
I have been taking the list of people and adding them into constant contact for letting them know when this next webinar to make a pledge will be.
Yeah. Okay. So Tuya and I have to figure that out, and we don't want to collide with any other webinar that's up there. But we're kind of looking at, you know, Tuya may have a different idea, but we're kind of looking at Sunday. We don't want too much time to elapse, and maybe Sunday will be our day. And it seems to be a day when people have time to do this. So we're not forcing anything. We're just interested in those people who can take seriously a 7-year commitment, which involves just a little bit a day and whatever else you want to give to it. What I say is that when Tuya began to do these Ask programs she's done about 100 different countries in different ways. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how people live and what they really need. And sometimes I learned about the energies that they actually have to work with. Either DK gave them, or they were obvious, or the date of incorporation of their constitution suggested something, you know. So ray energies, astrological energies, I learned something. And I was surprised, frankly, at my own ignorance regarding the way of life of people in so many different countries. I think there are, someone looked this up the other day, was it you, Michael? I forget. Or no, maybe it was Frederick Andres. 197 countries, and 2 of them, the Holy See and Palestine, were not yet members of the United Nations. All of the 195 were. And that's a huge increase from the time of the Tibetan. That number of countries just didn't exist. So anyway, it's something Tuya's had on her mind for 10 years, I don't know, more, I don't know, about really, you know, from the first rate perspective, getting in there and helping esoterically, and that we now have the opportunity to do that. So I'll confer with Michael, and we'll or BL, and we'll get we'll get your email addresses and maybe send out to everybody what it is and when it takes place and what's expected of a person. Basically, to do this kind of work, we have to take a pledge that we will do it. So we don't do the normal human personal thing and say, yeah, that was kind of interesting then, but now, well, I've got a lot to do, and well, we want to avoid that all too human reaction. We're going forward next 7 years to 2026, which is the festival week of the new group of world servers in 2026. And meanwhile, the incredible, intense celebration at WASAC of the 100-year conclave, which will make a tremendous difference at first interiorly and then later exteriorly. Okay.
Okay, the Ask broadcasts continue on the morning schedule through Sunday, and the Dissipation of Glamour webinar will be in the morning on Friday.
Yeah.
Sunday, we've got the Secret Doctrine webinar at 8 p.m. GMT.
So we'll have to avoid that. We'll have to avoid that if we go with Sunday, because we don't want to present any kind of collision with Francis's work. And what about Saturday? Does it say, Michael?
Yes, on Saturday, we've got a faculty webinar at 8 p.m. GMT.
I'm not so worried about the faculty. Well, okay, we'll see what we find best to do. Thanks for the rundown on that, and I may be contacting you in terms of or maybe you already set it up, you and BL, about who it was that was at that second webinar a few days ago. I want to see the names and the email addresses.
Yeah, I've got all those names in constant contact now.
Michael.
Okay, yes, BL?
I also sent you the attendee report, so you have the attendee report that gives both the names and the emails.
Okay, I'll pay attention to that, and Tuya and I will make a decision about what day looks best to do this without colliding
Michael.
with others. Yeah, Tuya, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes,
Good.
very well.
Because I tried desperately to open my mic and it didn't. So also that we are going to offer these moments where people can do their oath. Also after this, what is coming next? Because one cannot actually think that everyone has time. So don't worry, we will make sure that everyone can do that.
Yeah, it's a form of a sincere, earnest, serious commitment. And it's so important. DK says, look, so many of you just aren't interested in politics, he says. But why not when it conditions millions and millions of people? So I remember that, and at the time, it was long ago, I was reading. I wasn't particularly interested in politics, but it kind of woke me up. And I think we can do some good work behind the scenes to help the various nations express their soul. It's so simple what is being intended here, to help the various nations really express their soul qualities. Okay, I think that's it. Let's just do the great invocation. I stay on mute, otherwise we get that very ragged, what happens, So, Tuya, do you want to do the great invocation? Or are you not hearing me? No. Okay, maybe not hearing me.
I'm hearing, but the mic is so. It takes always long time before I get it functioning. Yes, I can do that. I maybe
Okay.
go to other spot because of our dog who is snoring beside me.
Ah, yes. Hey, and counting. We're now up to 3 cats and 4 dogs. Oh my. And you should hear what happens when a guest comes. 2 of the dogs like to bark, one in a very high pitch, and one dog howls like a wolf. She's a little dog, but she has continuity of tone, Michael, not discontinuity of barkingness. She can really put up a good howl, and then you really know it's like an orchestra, or a choir, rather, I should say. Okay. All right. Here we go.
Okay. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
Thank you. Thank you to you. And tomorrow morning, reappearance of the Christ, 6 a.m. GMT. So you know what that means for you, whether you can or can't make it. And I don't think we have anything tomorrow night unless we manage to slide something in. So anyway, reappearance of the Christ, one of the 2 word for word meditations that Tibetan gave, and at 6 a.m. GMT. And meanwhile, we'll go on with the normal ask schedule, and we'll bring in this Esoteric United Nations work shortly. And everybody who really wants to participate, really wants to be serious about it, will have the opportunity. It's sometimes been asked of me, I said that we would arrange people in groups of 9. Well, is it so? I mean, surely only the master can do that. And of course, only the master can do that in a specifically esoteric way. But we can do it in such a way that we have these groups of 9 moved by a very positive spirit and possible to be absorbed into the heart center of the planetary logos. So we do it nonetheless, not pretending to be a master or something like that, okay? It's just convenient, and it's a good way of operating, considering the absorption factor into the heart center of the planetary logos. Right, friends, that's it for right now. And I'll convert this, get this to BL, and you'll have it before long, you know, on Makara and so forth. So lots of love, many blessings from the whole team. And, you know, that's quite a few people here operating to help bring you the work here, BL and Michael and Joe and Tui and myself and Olivia. And if I've left anybody out, please forgive me. And we go on. See you. Bye-bye.